Super Bowl 59 review. The Eagles destroy, they dismantle, and embarrass the Kansas City Chiefs. We hadn't seen too many Super Bowls like this in recent memory. Many of the Super Bowls have been very close. Very close. With the exception of Super Bowl 55, the Chiefs and the Buccaneers. We'll get into the game. I just have to make a few comments about the broadcast, the presentation, the pregame. The national anthem was terrible. Can't you just sing it through straight and do it right? No, because it has to be a performance instead of honoring the country and the flag. Okay, that's one thing. Number two, Fox's scoreboard was one of the worst ever. I mean, I'd have to look through all of them. But who came up with an idea like that? It was difficult to read. Just leave it alone. Getting cute. Well, Fox has been known over the years to get cute. And number three, Fox can do better than Kevin Burkhardt. He tries too hard. He could be worse, but he tries too hard. Tom Brady also tries too hard. But let's get to the game. Now, I will admit that I picked the Chiefs to win. I presented the case of how both teams could win. What would their strategy be? If the Chiefs were to win, if it was a close game, it would be the Chiefs' day. I didn't see the Chiefs winning big, but as long as it was close, it would look like a Chiefs victory. But if the game was one-sided, that's how the Eagles would win. And that's how they did win. But come on, who thought it was going to look anything like this? Who thought it was just going to be complete domination, that the Eagles were just going to dominate every facet of the game? There's no question when you looked at the rosters and the starters, offense, defense, that the Eagles were a much better team. You just didn't expect to see a team like the Chiefs lose like this when they were healthy. Because I was reminded over and over again that, well, the Chiefs lost to the Buccaneers, and the reason was because the offensive line was not healthy and they couldn't protect Patrick Mahomes and he was running for his life. Okay. But what excuse do you have this time? There is no excuse. The Eagles were just clearly superior. They were better prepared. In this case, they were better coached. And they're far more talented and skilled than the Chiefs. And I was thinking about this, that, well, if you had any other teams in the AFC, would they have made it more interesting? I think the same result, you would have had the same result if the Bills played. It may have even been worse because the Bills' defense is not as good as the Chiefs' defense. I mean, Josh Allen was the MVP. Josh Allen is playing the best football of his career. But if you really step back, the Bills don't have that good of a team. Really, they don't. The Ravens, well, I suppose with Lamar and Derrick Henry, it could have been more interesting, but they would have lost by double digits too. The Eagles were far and away the best team this year. You have to start with the defense, though. The defense won the day. The pressure they put on Mahomes really was just the front four. And the way that I mean, they didn't really give him anywhere to go. He couldn't escape. They closed in on him. And they forced him into mistakes. And it was that way from the beginning. The Chiefs did not cross the 50-yard line, midfield, in the first half. They were shut out in the first half. Patrick Mahomes faced the largest deficit of his entire career in this Super Bowl. Don't look at the final score because it's not indicative at all of how the game was played. This was one of the most one-sided Super Bowls in history. And if the Eagles really want to put up 50 points, they could have put up 50 points, but they didn't. And the Chiefs made the final score look better with a bunch of garbage time points when the game was already over. Patrick Mahomes was able to stat pad in the fourth quarter when the game was over. I mean, he had 3 touchdowns and 2 picks. Okay, but for most of the game, that number was no touchdowns and 2 picks. I mean, that was the story. In the first half, he couldn't do anything. And I will say that this time around, Mahomes doesn't have an excuse by saying, well, you didn't have a healthy offensive line. He was sped up. He was rushing throws. He at times was just inaccurate. And he made one terrible mistake. His 2 interceptions, the DeJean pick 6 was, of all the throws he's made in the Super Bowls, I would think that was the worst in all 5 Super Bowls. The worst. He had no business throwing that ball. The one that Zach Bond got, a little more excusable because his offensive lineman ran into him, which altered the throw, but I'm still not exactly sure where that ball was going. When you look at Mahomes in his 5 Super Bowls, 10 touchdowns to 7 interceptions in the modern NFL, the passers league, that's bad. That's bad for an all-time great. You'd expect a lot better than that. But the thing I will defend Mahomes, I'm not making an excuse, is this. He did have no time to throw in this game, throughout the game, because of all the pressure the Eagles brought. And you look across the board at his receivers and tight ends and weapons, and you have to say, well, who does he really have? Worthy's just a speedster, but he's a rookie. He's raw. He put up over 150 yards receiving, but once again, that was at the end of the game. DeAndre Hopkins, he looks about done. Great career, but he doesn't have much left. And Travis Kelce, if you just look at the statistics from the year, they look good, but if you watch more closely, he really slowed down this season. Not the same player. And the running game is good to a point. But with that said, Mahomes, with that interception, the pick 6, that one was on him. I mean, he just should have never thrown that football. It was a very complete performance by the Eagles defense. Their front 4 won all game long. They didn't even need to blitz. Zach Bond was excellent. And what a story he had this season to become one of the best linebackers in football, changing positions. The secondary was good. man, I just hadn't seen Mahomes struggle like this ever. I mean, it was different than the Buccaneers. I mean, the Buccaneers Super Bowl was really bad. It was. But it wasn't this bad. As it was really a nightmare game. And, we've seen the Chiefs get off to slow starts. We've seen the Chiefs, I mean, they have a way of coming back in these 10-point deficits. But you had a feeling right away that wasn't going to happen today. That wasn't going to happen this time around. And the Eagles made sure it didn't. Because the defense kept coming and coming and coming. And the Chiefs didn't have any adjustments to make. They didn't. They were just overmatched. Patrick Mahomes didn't have anywhere to go. There were no heroics this time. There were no adjustments. And I applaud the Eagles for making the necessary coaching changes, making personnel changes, and learning from their mistakes from last time. I'll get to legacies at the end of this. What does it mean for legacies? Because they took this game. And the Chiefs never had any hope. They crushed their spirits. And that's called stepping on your opponent's throat. I mean, we really hadn't seen a game like this since the Seahawks-Broncos Super Bowl. Again, the Buccaneers and the way they beat the Chiefs, that was really bad. But this one, embarrassing to lose in this fashion. But let's look at the other side of the ball. Because after all, Jalen Hurts was the MVP, and once again, he played another great Super Bowl. As he actually had one of the best performances in Super Bowl history in a losing effort 2 years ago. This one, he did make him a turnover. He did get intercepted once. But that was the only mistake he made. Otherwise, I mean, he had 5 incompletions the entire game, and he was very accurate in these one-on-one throws. And it didn't play out the way I thought it would. I thought the strategy of the Chiefs defense would be this, was stop the run, which they did. Keep the ball in Jalen Hurts' hands. And they did. And it didn't work because Hurts was so good. And, I mean, also, the Chiefs' defense was on the field the entire first half. I mean, they were gassed. And part of the success for the Eagles was ball control. Keep the ball away from Patrick Mahomes. Win the time of possession. And they did. The Eagles receivers won one-on-one matchups. One of the big matchups in this game was Brown versus McDuffie, and Brown got the better of McDuffie. And he had some big plays, and then, the one that officially ended the game was the touchdown to Devontae Smith. And you really couldn't throw it any better than that. Hurts was so accurate. He was decisive, and you have to talk about his running too. The way he ran the football. He rushed for over 70 yards. And we talked about keeping Hurts in the pocket and taking Barkley away. The Chiefs did that. you look at the other side of the ball, and what the Eagles actually did was they kept Mahomes in the pocket, and they got behind so quick, the Chiefs were completely one-dimensional, and just staying in the pocket, Mahomes struggled. I mean, he had very little time to pass. But that's something I wonder about Patrick Mahomes long term. When everyone's talking about, oh, he's going to win 10 Super Bowls, which he's not. I mean, it's just so ridiculous, some of the things people think. If you take away some of his athleticism and some of his creativity and just beat us as a pocket passer, I still wonder how good he is. I mean, Mahomes is already an all-time great. But as great as he is, just compare him to other quarterbacks and Hall of Fame players. How good is he at reading defenses? Brady's better at reading a defense and coverages than him. And laugh at Aaron Rodgers all you want. Rodgers is better than Mahomes at that as well. It's just he has all these intangibles and the different kinds of throws, all the tricks he has in his bag. And I'm not saying that Mahomes can't get it done as a pocket passer or he relies on gimmicks to get it done. But you do have to be prepared for almost everything with Mahomes. The flips, the left-handed throws, the runs that he has. But Jalen Hurts outplayed Mahomes. I mean, you could argue he outplayed him both times in the Super Bowl. It was just, last time he had the fumble. That was his big mistake last time, and that cost them dearly. But the success of the Eagles was, and the way you have to win is you have to win big. You cannot keep it close. And they never allowed the Chiefs to get close. Okay, back to the defense again of the Chiefs versus the offense of the Eagles. Again, the efficiency of Jalen Hurts. He only had one turnover. He played a very clean game, and he made a few really big throws. And he hurt the Chiefs with his legs. Credit the Chiefs with this. They took away Saquon Barkley. I mean, he was under 60 yards a game. He was under 3 yards a carry. They did what none of these other defenses could do. I mean, this was one of the all-time individual regular seasons by a running back. He was the offensive player of the year. He rushed for over 2,000 yards for the season. And he ran all over the Rams and the Commanders. They could not slow him down. And the Chiefs committed to stopping the run, and they did that. Problem was Jalen Hurts was so good. He was so good, and the Chiefs could not get off the field because their offense did zero in the first half, and they were gassed in the second half. And on top of it, Chris Jones got hurt. As a 49ers fan, I was sitting there saying, oh, Chris Jones sure couldn't get hurt in either of our Super Bowls. I'm telling you, I think if Chris Jones got hurt in either of the Super Bowls, 49ers would have won whatever Super Bowl that was. But Spagnuolo, he had not an A game. I still think he had a B game. The Chiefs, in the first half, their defense did everything they could to keep their team in the game. But you're not going to hold and lock someone down forever. And the Eagles just have too much talent on offense. They have the offensive line. The best offensive line in football, the biggest, most powerful offensive line in football. They have two very different receivers. They have a possession receiver, they have a speed receiver. They have a dual threat quarterback. And they have, for this season, the best running back in football. And I'll also say Goddard's a pretty darn good tight end. He's not the best in the league, but he's a good receiving tight end, and he's a threat, and you have to account for him. And Spagnuolo, he dialed up blitzes, he took some chances, and he got burned on a few of them. Because the Eagles' O-line's so good that they were able to protect Hurts. They were able to hold up long enough with the blitzes, and you had to take something away. And they chose to take Barkley away and say, Hurts, you got to beat us with your arm, and that was the right choice. I mean, in decision, you had to choose that. You could not allow yourself to just be run on all day long. And the tackling of the Chiefs was just excellent. I mean, the fault was not with the defense. The Eagles, give them credit for the coaching. Fangio, it was a brilliant plan. Sirianni gets his Super Bowl. Hurts gets a Super Bowl. And it's sweet revenge and victory. And it's so sweet because it came against the team you wanted. You wanted another crack at the Chiefs. You got them. And you won in a game that wasn't even close. It wasn't a call here. It wasn't a call there. It wasn't lucky in any way. You destroyed them. And it looks good for the Eagles going forward because Hurts is young. They will still have this offensive line going forward. They're going to have the receivers back. As I've said throughout these playoffs, you had to win this year because there's no guarantee that Saquon's going to do anything like this again. History says that after you have a big 2,000-yard rushing season like this, that you're not going to repeat it again. And a long season like that for a running back, even though they rested him and they had in week 18, again, let's go back to the 16-game season, please. And then you add in the extra playoff games and the Super Bowl. That's a long season for running back. That's a big load for him. This was your year, but you got the young quarterback. You got weapons who are going to still be here. You got this offensive line, and you have Jalen Carter, franchise player on defense. You've got depth. You have a good thing here going, and you have a legitimate chance at repeating because you look at the NFC. No one really scares me in the NFC. If I'm the Eagles. The Commanders might actually be one of the bigger threats. They may be. We'll see if there's a little bit of sophomore slump for Jayden Daniels. As good as he is, we'll see if there's a sophomore slump for him. The Lions, I don't believe in Jared Goff. I don't. And that's an indoor football team. You put them outside, put them on grass, they struggle. Who else is good in the NFC? Vikings will probably take a step back. The Packers, I don't know about Jordan Love. The Rams, maybe. The 49ers, my team. They need to make a lot of changes. A lot of changes. What I really respect and like about this Eagles team is they showed you can still win the right way, by running the football, protecting the football, good defensive line play. They won up front. That's how you build a football team. You invest in your offensive line, you invest in your defensive line, you protect your quarterback, you open up holes for your running back, and then you attack the opposing quarterback. Great victory. I mean, this we'll have to see where we would rank this, but man, this considering the opponent, I would not put it as high as what the Seahawks did against the Broncos, because that was a record-setting Broncos offense. But it's one of the greatest defensive efforts in Super Bowl history. I mean, I'll put the 85 Bears aside. I'll put the 2000 Ravens aside. That was expected, but neither of them faced powerhouse offenses or all-time quarterbacks. Yes, Mahomes didn't have the greatest of weapons. All of his players were in their primes. But he's a top 5 quarterback of all time. And you handed him the worst loss of his career. Again, you don't even have to look at the final score. Just use your eyes. That was the lowest point of his professional career. And this time, you can't blame it on injuries or anything like this. And this game, when we're getting to the legacies, it doesn't damage Mahomes' legacy or the Chiefs. They already were a dynasty. They already won 3 Super Bowls. But the three-peat did not happen. They are a great team. But this one hurts. This one really hurt. And it's not one you're going to forget. This Super Bowl loss, I'll say this, will not damage the legacy of Patrick Mahomes, but the whole conversation with who's the greatest, him or Brady, is over. I mean, it should not have even begun until, I would say, Mahomes has 5 Super Bowls. Yeah, a three-peat would have been amazing, but last time I checked, 4 Super Bowls doesn't equal 7, and he's still at number 3. And now he's 3-2, and he's had 2 very bad losses. I mean, Brady never had games this bad in the Super Bowl. Nothing like this. He never got blown out in a Super Bowl. He never got shut out in the first half of a Super Bowl. He had some performances that were worse than others, but nothing like this. So we can stop the all-time greatest quarterback conversation. That's over. He's behind Brady. For me, he's still behind Montana. And the highest you could rank Mahomes is number 3 right now. And he would drop in my personal quarterback Super Bowl rankings too. I had him at number 4. I'd at least knock him back a spot now. Having 2 bad Super Bowls, like 10 touchdowns, 7 receptions, and just not even be able to compete in 2 of your 5 Super Bowls. I mean, I've even made the argument that you could argue about Mahomes and the Super Bowls. You could make an easy argument. He could have lost all of the Super Bowls that he's played, all 5 of them. The 49ers blew a 10-point lead in the 4th quarter in his first Super Bowl. He loses his 2nd Super Bowl badly. A 3rd Super Bowl against the Eagles. If that penalty wasn't called at the end of the game The Eagles could have went down, scored, or could have gone to overtime. Last year's Super Bowl, under the old rules, overtime rules, the 49ers could have kicked a field goal. When they kicked the field goal, they could have won, and that was it. But with the overtime rules that we have now, the game continued. And then you have this year. How about Andy Reid? He's now, I have Andy Reid on my all-time Mount Rushmore for head coaches. I say Lombardi, Belichick, Shula, and Reid. I don't think this loss has done anything to change anything because he's among the greatest in all-time wins. He's got the second most. He's got 6 Super Bowl appearances now. I believe Shula had 5, if I'm not mistaken. But this is 6 for him, and he's 3-3. 3-3 in Super Bowls, and he's coached very well in close games and from behind. He's one of the great offensive play callers of all time, but now 3-3. And the Eagles get some revenge back on Andy Reid. That's interesting. He got the win against his old team, but now they got to win against him, and he's 1-1 against his old team in the Super Bowl. That's interesting. It's kind of like getting the last laugh. But you can stop the conversation as well between, is he going to be the greatest head coach of all time, him or Bill Belichick? Not when you're 3-3. He is one of the best, but he's had some really bad Super Bowl losses. The one with the Eagles was not good, and you can even say the same thing. Brady beat Mahomes head-to-head. Belichick also beat Andy Reid head-to-head multiple times. In the Super Bowl, in the championship game in 2018. It was a tough loss. And this is the one that you're going to remember, sadly, if you're the Chiefs. And maybe this is the end of Travis Kelce. Maybe. He was just a complete non-factor in this one. And it seemed like it wasn't just seem like this was a home game for the Eagles. It wasn't. They were just celebrating, the crowd, from the very start. This was their victory. And, I thought about this too. To finish up with this is, if you ask the Eagles, as painful as that last Super Bowl was, if you could say, well, you're going to return, you lost the Super Bowl, and it's hard to take, but if you said, you know what, you lose this one, but you're going to play them in 2 years again, and this time you're going to beat them, and you're going to beat them bad, and you're going to whoop them, I'd take it if I was them. It's sweet. There's nothing better than beating the team that beat you. Like, was it going to be nearly as satisfying if they beat the Bills or the Ravens? No. You beat the Chiefs. So congratulations to the Eagles. They deserved it.